Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, in the state capitol, a big public corruption case gets resolved, and hospitals continue to work on patient safety. Pennsylvania politics and government, in depth and in detail, and guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back. Well, Harrisburg was the scene this year of a major breakthrough in the public corruption cases. The former Speaker of the House, John Perzel, a Republican who held a seat for how long, John Micek?
32 years.
32 years. And you covered him, Robert, right?
That's right. Rise and fall, John Perzel.
The rise and fall, John Perzel. Well, sitting across from me, as often is the case, is John Micek with the Allentown Morning Call and Robert Swift with Times-Shamrock Newspapers. All right, John, let me start with you. John Perzel was charged with 82 counts of public corruption. In July, he said, I will never plead out. He pled out. I got all that plead and pled right? Did I get that right?
I think it's pleaded.
Pleaded.
One does not say pled.
Pled. Pleaded out. Okay, go ahead.
Well, and that's the thing. Up until about 2 weeks ago, Perzel was continuing to say, I'm going to fight this. He'd long maintained that he had done nothing wrong. Then 2 weeks ago, 3 of his senior aides, including his brother-in-law, Samuel Buzz Stokes, all entered guilty pleas. Mr. Perzel must have seen the writing on the wall. What he said was interesting at the time was that I'm not now considering a guilty plea, which means maybe he had already considered it and had begun negotiations. So it was very carefully parsed. Yeah. So he goes in last week, pleads guilty to 8 of 82 counts.
82.
We asked Frank Fina, the lead prosecutor in the case, why those 8. He said those were the 8 sort of most high-profile, most egregious of the counts. They figured they got their guy.
And as usual, there's always involved conspiracy and obstruction.
Right.
You've covered a lot of these. Right? Go ahead.
Theft of public services, conflict of interest is another one. These were cases that involved, the heart of the plea was the cases that involved, giving public contracts to computer firms to create voter databases, and then for political purposes, for the Republican campaign effort for the House.
Yeah. So now, he could get as much as, did I read 24 years? Is that right, John?
At the extreme end, a cumulative of 24 years.
Does anybody expect that?
Probably not. Fina was saying yesterday that the standard range for these kinds of offenses is 18 months to a little bit better than 4 years. No one really knows what the sentence is going to be. He said it's going to be predicated on Perzel's cooperation.
Now, Robert, as I said before, you've covered, well, John, you have too. Both of you have covered a lot of these. I mean, this sentence, Mike Vion, a former majority leader, I think, at one point in the state house, or whip. Majority whip, had, he got a pretty stiff sentence out of this same judge. Yes. Is that right, Judge Lewis?
Yes, of course, that way he went to trial. And,
he went to trial, and he got 6 to 11 years.
The prosecutors shook Perzel's hand when they came in, and his defense attorney. So that was, then he gave us more cordiality in this.
I guess. I'm thinking somebody's going to...
But he's in a state prison, too. That's the big difference. All these people are in state prisons.
Okay. Oh, I get it.
And
so unlike former Senator, help me out,
Vince
Fumo, who's down in Kentucky, right, in a federal prison. All right, John, let me ask you this question. Now, here's the big question, and both of you can weigh in on this. He promised to cooperate. Now, already 25 Pennsylvania lawmakers, ex-lawmakers, and staffers were charged, and they've adjudicated 12 of them before this situation that we're talking about now. We got to the 10 Republicans.
That's right.
So run through, what do you think cooperation could mean?
Well, think about it. Here's a guy who, for the better part of 2 decades, had his fingers in every major legislative decision that was made. We're talking about state takeovers of troubled school districts, pensions, the pay raise, the legalization of casino gambling. A guy who played a preeminent role in the shaping and all of this legislation. When one is at the table like that, no doubt one hears things. Not to say that anything untoward happened, but I'm sure there were people who, when they found out that Mr. Perzel was cooperating, probably began to sweat a little bit.
Now listen, you go ahead.
Yeah, we have a trial supposed to start at the end of the month in September with former Rep. Brett Feast and Perzel's chief of staff. That's coming up. We still have the DeWeese.
Bill DeWeese, a former speaker.
Yeah, former speaker.
And former York County Rep.
Stetler.
Steve Stetler, another leader in the House. All right, Robert, I want to ask you this question. So far, nothing in the Senate. 25 people, right, over in the House, nothing in the Senate. I talked to then Attorney General Corbett, who was sitting right where you guys are sitting. I know you've asked this question. They say the Senate investigation is ongoing. Has anything
You would
been
think
done?
from the public record of Bonusgate that Pennsylvania has a unicameral legislature, just a House, that there's not even a Senate. It's all smoke and mirrors. That question was asked yesterday of Frank Fina, won't comment.
You won't even say there's an ongoing investigation.
It's a grand jury. We
okay.
can't,
We're going to run to break. When we come back, we have another situation with a state senator from Allegheny County, Jane Orie. Her charges have gotten a little more complicated. These guys will straighten us out. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by ReconnectPA.org, supporting a comprehensive transportation funding solution, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Robert Swift and John Micek, both journalists. We're talking about public corruption in Harrisburg. I won't go there. I almost said something, Robert. All right, let's talk a little bit about State Senator Jane Orie. She's still in office. She was charged with, similar problems of using staff and public resources for campaign purposes. In this case, most of them centered around the campaign of her sister, who sits on one of the appeals courts, correct?
That's right.
All right. Now, give us an update. Where does all that stand?
In this trial, this case is on the county level, Allegheny County. It's not being done by state prosecutors.
Right.
And recently, just this week, they, the DA in Allegheny County, Zappala, added new charges to Orie. Now, she'd gone to trial back in the winter. It was declared a mistrial when an issue arose of whether the defense had submitted some forged documents.
Forged documents.
And that question was, well, how'd they get there? How'd they get to be that way? So these new charges elaborate on the claim that Senator Orie was involved in that. Now, she had been the third-ranking Republican in leadership. She had to step down from that post when she was charged. So this issue is very much ongoing. It raises a contrast to why is she the only senator caught up in this.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Before we move on, the other thing that happened this week is the three-judge panel in the State Superior Court ruled that a new trial can go forward against Senator Orie. She'd claimed that because her earlier trial had ended in mistrial, that there were double jeopardy protections. They disagreed. The new trial will go forward.
And Joan Orie is on the Supreme
State
Court.
Supreme
State
Court.
Supreme Court, yeah, okay. All right.
But
look.
yeah, you're right. I mean, we have so far the only state senator who's been implicated in all of this wide-ranging public corruption investigations.
Right.
This came not from the Attorney General's office, but from the Allegheny County District Attorney's office. There have been questions raised, as we talked about before the break, about why the Attorney General's investigation did not spread to the state Senate. They've maintained all along that it's still ongoing, but there are still no charges.
But there is this question. Some of these public interest groups have said that the time for which you can file these charges is running out.
The statute comes up, I think, pretty soon.
For some,
no,
there are different time frames for that.
The Attorney General's office makes an argument that when you're talking about public corruption cases, there are modifiers on those statute of limitations. That's their answer to that.
That's their answer.
But still, the last charges in Bonusgate were filed in December of 2009. We're coming up on 2 years. Yeah. And it's that begs the question.
Now, before we go run to break, and I want to come and talk about Auditor General Jack Wagner, who's creating more problems for people in the bureaucracy. You know what I mean? Let me ask you this question: we have other state senators who are currently being investigated by the feds. One would be former Senator Bob Mello, a Democratic leader, up in the area that your papers cover, correct?
And that's an ongoing federal investigation. There have been federal grand jury in Scranton. They've had former aides called to testify this summer. Right. They've had a political consultant who had both a Senate contract but also political work for Senator Mello.
So the summary point here, John, is this, that only one senator has been caught up in the so-called public corruption. We call it Bonusgate, but it's really public corruption. Right. Senator Orie out in Allegheny County. prosecuted by the Allegheny County DA. Nothing out of the Attorney General's office for the Senate connected to this public corruption. Is that am I
Yeah, I mean,
accurate
presumably
about
everyone is looking at the same body of evidence or the same stuff. So the question
got it.
remains, why have two different jurisdictions in law enforcement, the feds and the locals in Allegheny County, found stuff where the Attorney General's office is not?
All right, well, the Auditor General of the state has some recommendations about the state stores. I don't think he's talking about selling them. He wants to do something else with them. We'll find out what that is after we pay some bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. All right, a little segue here away from public corruption to Jack Wagner, the Auditor General. He's been pretty active, and now he's going on to the state store. What does the Auditor General of the state, now you know that a group of Republicans led by the House Majority Leader, Mike Terzel, want to sell the state stores, and Wagner says what about what he wants to see happen?
Yeah, who doesn't like talking about booze? First thing in the morning. All right, so last week, Auditor General Jack Wagner comes out with a new study looking at the wine kiosks that are in grocery stores, these horrible Rube Goldfarb contractions.
I got to stop you right now.
Yes.
Did you ever use one?
It is the most undignified process in the entire world. You have to blow into a breathalyzer. You have to run your credit card. You have to talk to a disembodied voice off at like LCB World Headquarters. You feel like a doofus.
Okay,
you
hold
really
on.
do.
Did you ever? I'll come back. Did you ever use one?
No.
And I never used. I don't know that I would know how to do this.
If I didn't drink already, it would
would drive you to drink.
So, but they've been a disaster for the LCB. They've not met their sales targets. They broke down over the Christmas holidays. You really want like a population of Pennsylvanians who are not lubricated at Christmas? It's amazing there weren't like murder
So what's
sprees.
he say?
So he says,
what?
A, get rid of them,
Yeah.
or make them work better. Or alternately, let the state stores be open 12 hours a day and on Sundays from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening or whatever.
Now, we got about 40 seconds left. Is that a substitute? I mean, is this an alternative idea
Yes, this
to
is
selling them? Go ahead.
This is the pushback to Mike Terzel's proposal to, get rid of them. You see Auditor General Wagner weighing in, and also Senator Scarnati, saying take the handcuffs off the LCB. So this is the pushback that we're going to see this fall on this issue.
Now, this is big on the agenda. And by the way, the residents of our state in poll after poll have said sell it. But I think you guys have expressed over the years skepticism about this, right?
It's more subtle than that. If you ask people if you want to sell them, they'll say, sure, sell them. But it's not because they think it's a horrible idea. It's mostly because they want a bigger selection and they want better prices.
Yeah.
So if you say, well, if the existing infrastructure can do that, I think it polls the same way. It's mostly about selection and prices.
Now, final word on this. You've been through this before.
Yeah.
Too many times. I won't ask you to say how many.
It's down on the fourth.
Okay.
This is a hard road to haul.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Yes or no, do they do it?
I mean, total passage?
Yep.
No.
Okay, there you have it. All right, hospitals continue to work on patient safety. We're going to talk a little bit about that. That's important to all of us after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Over the past several years, hospitals have increased their activity in the whole patient safety area. We talked about this on this program sometime in the past. Joining me to talk about that and Bring us up to date is Sharon Muscatell. She's the Director of Quality and Performance Improvement for the Hospital and Healthsystem Association of Pennsylvania. I got that all out, didn't I?
You did.
That's quite a mouthful. We go through these titles. Well, look, a few years ago, there was this renewed interest in patient safety, and your organization got heavily involved in working with that, working on improving hospital safety. Let's talk about, first of all, what that generically means when we say hospital safety. What are we talking about? Changes within the hospital? Bring us up to...
Well, patient safety and quality have been a focus for time immemorial, but
right.
I think that the focus now really has come back full circle again. It's been important that we really focus on activities that we're providing for the patients and looking at better communication and teamwork within the hospital. That ultimately results in safer care for the patients. But not only the safer care for the patients, we look for safer care for our providers as well. Working together, communicating, understanding where the focus needs to be is extremely important. And
now, in order to, the legislature a few years ago passed a bill that created the Pennsylvania Patient Safety Authority. And
yes.
I think some of their folks have been on this program, a few years ago. Is that to sort of monitor and keep tabs on incidences of whatever, a lack of safety or keep records on? What does the authority do?
Well, the focus of the authority really is, number one, it is a state agency, but it's a non-punitive agency. The authority does take data and looks specifically at near misses,
right.
Serious events, and infrastructure failures.
Now,
and
what does near miss mean?
Near miss means something that potentially could have harmed a patient,
okay.
but it did not harm it. It was stopped before it got to that level.
Okay.
The Patient Safety Authority takes that data and uses that to provide opportunity for education so that we can take that information, go back, and if
right.
those events occur again, we've learned from them so we don't do the same thing over again.
Does this sort of involve also sharing information so that, a practice that might be helpful to patients and their families can be utilized by different hospitals, different healthcare facilities? Is that also part of it?
Absolutely.
Sort of a best practice condition?
Absolutely. The authority puts out an advisory that actually captures a lot of that information and shares those best practices,
right.
because even though something may have helped in one hospital, other hospitals can take that information and modify it for their own unique environment and utilize that for a safer environment.
Yeah, one of the things that often gets talked about whenever you're trying to change institutions, whether it be hospitals or government or businesses, they also sort of have a culture. Mm-hmm. And you have to bring about a cultural change. Give us some sense about the cultural changes that you think have taken place in hospitals and other healthcare facilities that have helped to reduce hospital errors and other things that potentially could go wrong.
Well, Terry, one of the things I can share with you is a particular program that we've just completed at the Hospital and Health System Association. It's called the Comprehensive Unit-Based Safety Project. It's a project that was initially launched back in 2005 with the Michigan Hospital Association and Johns Hopkins University to reduce central line-associated bloodstream infections.
Right.
We have approximately 31 hospitals in the state that have worked on that. The focus of that isn't the technical or clinical component, because most providers know what that means. But the focus of that program clearly is that comprehensive-based process,
right.
where we increase communication, we utilize teamwork, and we really work to try to standardize processes so we can reduce harm.
And that's also sharing information.
Correct.
And I noticed in some of the reports that have been issued, you've also reduced catheter-associated urinary tract infections and ventilator associated. We're getting into some heavy medical stuff, well beyond my ability to understand. But I mean, it's over a wider range of potential problems as well.
Correct. The idea behind a culture of safety is it can't, while you can target it to specific infections, as you've just mentioned, like ventilator-associated pneumonias or catheter-associated urinary tract infections, you can utilize this for anything. Pressure ulcers, falls within the hospital, anything that provides an opportunity for harm. It's important that people work together, they take a look at what the process is, where they can fix the system or the processes. It's not about the person doing something wrong. It's about what we can do to prevent harm for the next patient before the next patient comes through the door.
Yeah, and you think now that all across a range of medical services, not just hospitals, but you go into a physician's office, you go to a surgical, a center, whatever, that this is permeating the healthcare profession in a wider sense?
I think it is. I think it's a slow process, though. One thing that people don't understand, I think intuitively you think this should be very easy. It's easy to communicate. It's easy to work together. It's not. And it has taken a long time. I've been a nurse for 37 years, and I share this all the time. I think we've come full circle, and I think that now the opportunity for that communication is increasing. We're trying to make sure that through an education process in the medical schools, in nursing schools, and other professions, people are truly learning what it means to work as a team.
Yeah, one other aspect of it is I think now with the internet and with the availability of healthcare information that patients are now more aware and I'm sure are at the center. And I mean, some patients obviously know more, are more acutely aware. I know if I have a medical problem, particularly my wife, she'll be scouting information to, ask the doctor this, ask the doctor that. So we are finding more informed patients so that you in the medical community are getting more questions asked than probably you ever did before.
Absolutely, and I think you bring a very important point up, it's important for any consumer and any patient to understand what's going on. It's a two-way communication. The fact that people utilize the internet now to try to have information, I think our job becomes clarification now and really speaking about what some of the alternatives are, because it used to be that a physician would say, we're going to do this. Now a patient can say, is there something else we can look at and do? And it's important that they can
And they may go seek a second opinion.
Correct.
Which a lot, depending how complicated it might be, that's not an uncommon practice. But overall, and we're just about out of time, overall you think that the entire healthcare community is moving strongly in a much better direction here.
Absolutely. I think the quality and patient safety is in the forefront. The communication piece and team building, that's a very important thing.
Thanks for the update. Thanks for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well, and we'll see you next week.